Hey besties, welcome back to the Best of Yvonne podcast, where today is episode 15, and I have a very, very special guest with us today. This is Dr. Lani Jones. She is a clinical psychologist and performance advisor. She and I actually met at a women's conference this past July in St. Louis, Missouri, and we were sitting at the same table, got talking, and I just fell in love with her right away. I love how brilliant she is. I love what she's going to share with you guys today. So today our topic really is chasing the elusive work-life balance. And I really want to ask, is it possible? Because I was flipping through my journal from 3 years ago. So September 30th, 2021, I wrote in my journal, I want more life balance. So Dr. Lani is going to dive in and share with us, is that possible, or what is it we are truly chasing? So welcome, Lani.
Thanks so much for having me today. So excited to be here having this conversation, just to see your beautiful face again too. That's always great.
Thank you. So let's dive in. Tell us all about what you've done, because I know you worked corporate, then you went out on your own. So just fill us in on what you're doing.
So as a clinical psychologist, I started my career in corporate healthcare and was in the academia world. And so know all about running that rat race and navigating that system. And then got burned out pretty quickly on that after a few years and went out on my own, opened a private practice. Now I'm building out another business in this coaching and consulting sphere. And so at different seasons, it's looked very different of what does balance look like and how do we define that? And so I've worked with a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, those in the corporate world, figuring out, why am I chasing after this balance piece? And now I'm even in a totally different season myself of, I took on the nomad life, sold my house, packed everything up, hit the road. And I'm like, we're going to go just take risks and be bold and see where the world takes us. So.
And that's truly what I fell in love with. When you were telling me that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I was so jealous. I would love to be able to do that. So where are you currently?
I'm currently in Nashville, Tennessee. I've been here for about a month. I think I'll at least be here till spring. I truly don't plan that far in advance. A lot of people are like, wait, you don't know what's next, or even in January, you don't have any housing. I'm like, no, we just kind of roll with it. So
I love that. Well, and that's a beautiful thing about coaching and consulting is it's your schedule and wherever you're at in the world, you can do that. And so tell me about this need, because I always say when you find a need, turn it into an opportunity. So you found this need of helping other women, other business owners, just get out of the rat race and, take us down that path of what like a day of work looks like for you and how you're helping women and business owners transform their life.
So in my private practice, I was primarily doing the testing and evaluation side of things like autism, ADHD, but then COVID hit and COVID changed so much for so many people. And by happenstance, I had gotten this caseload of women from the corporate sphere and entrepreneurs, and was like, wow, I just really love working with this group, because it was very much like, okay, here's the problem. Now what's the action plan? And that's very much my personality too. And I was like, how can I continue working with this population in a way that just feels even more authentic, or I can show up even and be more present for them? And so coaching seemed like that natural transition of I'm still using all my psych skills, all my people skills, all my business experience as a business owner myself. But this is a way to say, okay, how do I just meet you where you are? And because life blows up unexpectedly sometimes. And so in private practice is like, well, you had your 45-minute session for the week. I'll see you next week. Now it's like, all right, let's jump on a call. Or do we need to exchange some texts, some emails, Voxer, whatever it is. And so I really love helping this population just strip away whatever's holding them back or keeping them stuck or oftentimes they're like, okay, this doesn't feel good. And that's a really like layman's way of putting it, but I don't know quite how to articulate and find my way out. And so we really work together because it is a team effort to strip away those lies or fears or insecurities or even just those stories maybe you've been telling yourself your whole life and you aren't even aware of. And then you're like, oh, wait, how did I come to that belief system? But from a child, from a young age, we're forming those beliefs, watching everyone around us. Like we all have definitions of what does a successful businesswoman look like, or what does a successful partner look like, or even a successful parent. And so now if we're like, oh, I got to have this work-life balance, that's become like the trendy lingo along with like self-care. And if I'm not achieving that, then something must be wrong with me.
Yeah, I feel like it's just this illusion, right? Like, because I've written it over and over in my journal, and I'm like, okay, I'm done with that because it hasn't, no matter how much I've tried to do it, and I'm a get shit done kind of person.
Yes, you are. Yes,
you know
you
what I
are.
mean? Like
Yeah.
I coach this, I teach this, I do it, and I'm like, okay, so in my book, I came up with the 7 F's about just living a fulfilled life instead of balance. Because like if I've learned, like if I put attention in this area of my life, then there's less attention going to this area of my life. And so there will never be balance. And there's some things I'm really great at and some things I'm not. So I thought, well, what we're all seeking is to be happy and to be fulfilled and to make it, like our lives truly matter. So what does that look like? And so that's where I kind of piggybacked off of somebody else's work with these 7 F's, where I want fun in my life. I want to have family time. I want to have finances. I love making a lot of money. I want faith. I love my meditation time, my practice, philanthropy. I want to give back, even though it doesn't start with an F. It sounds like it. So I want to live a fulfilled life more than a balanced life. So when you're working with your clients, like what are some of I love to give our audience, our listeners, some tactile, some solid information that they can take home and apply or implement. So what would you say to that person that is like struggling with burnout because they're trying to balance everything and they're so burnt out, they're exhausted, they hate their job, they're feeling stuck? What advice would you give them?
Sometimes when someone's in that really burnout stage, it's almost like we work backwards. And I'll give them an exercise like, okay, strip away any practicality, any logistics here. I want you to just dream for a moment. And if you have to pull out the crayons or the colored pencils, your journal, colored pens, whatever this looks like for you, and think, okay, what is my ideal? And don't get caught up in, can I really do this? Is this practical? Anything like that. And just help them take a breath and a step back of, okay, I'm just going to dream for a minute. And I know you're so good at doing that, of carving out your meditation time and creating space for that, because when we're just going through the hustle and bustle and logistics, like oftentimes that's the last thing we're letting happen is any space to dream or for creativity or to even think, can something be different? And so oftentimes that's step one for those who are really burnt out of, I'm like, all right, let's pull out our little kid and let's just think, what would my ideal life look like?
Yeah, that's exactly what I do with my coaching clients as well. And I would say, and you probably experienced this as well, is most people don't know what they want. Most people just know they don't like where they're currently at.
Yep.
And then I always say, okay, well, you're not a tree. You really aren't stuck there. So let's actually take that out of your vocabulary because your body responds to what you verbally say to it. So let's make one action move today. Like take one action step today to unstuck yourself. So what can you do today? Whether that's you call a friend. So I go back to the F's, right? Call a friend, meditate your faith, go over your financial numbers. Like if you're in debt and you don't like where you're at, probably it's because you're ignoring those numbers. you need to look at those numbers every single day, but let's change the energy around it. I'm grateful that I have a grocery bill because I get to eat. I'm grateful I have utility bills because I have a home to live in. So when we reframe, we change our perspective around it, or the energy around it, then we can move in a different direction, right? Mm-hmm. So when your client is feeling stuck, like what's your go-to method for them?
So if we start with kind of the dream, the ends, I talk about it as a bridge. And so the other half of the bridge then is assessing where are you now and feeling that stuck. And so there's both internal factors and external factors to that. So some of those internal factors could be like I had mentioned earlier about all those stories we've already even subconsciously taken in about what did I think my life was going to look like? How do I define success? What kind of partner or woman or parent am I supposed to be? And so we do a whole deep dive assessment on that of what are your ingrained belief systems that are impacting how you're showing up today. And so we unpack that guilt or the shame or whatever emotions go along with that belief system. And then we also do the flip side of that and do that externally, because it may be you're like, I have a good definition of success. I feel okay about this, but a loved one, a family member, even a well-intentioned family member, your friends, or even your social circle, maybe you're feeling actually the pressure to show up in a different way. Maybe you are the one with the career and they're stay-at-home moms and you're like, oh crud, like I'm not the Pinterest mom too, and I'm trying to do it all. And so we look at both internal and external factors. And so once we have one side of the bridge and then we have that second side of where are we going, then it just becomes, how do we build the bridge then? Like you were saying, how do you take that first step to get unstuck? And so I just frame it as, let's build that bridge then to help you get unstuck.
I love that. I love the internal, external. I think that's fantastic. And again, when we speak in words, right? Painting a picture so that they can process and understand what it is you're trying to get them to do. And so how do you feel about journaling? Do you have your clients journal?
It's really on a case by case basis, because I'll have some who show up and they're like, do not tell me to journal ever. Like I'm out. And so I am totally like, I will meet you where you are. I think journaling can be very powerful. Me specifically, I love journaling too. I think it's incredibly helpful of just like writing out that internal narrative and story. But I go through seasons and people get really surprised by that. Like I will write every day for 6 months and then I won't write for 6 months for a single day too. And so that's, one strategy. I am all about creating. And I think we've so lost that piece because we become consumers in like everything we do. And so if that is like an art outlet, if that's even, I have some engineers on my caseload. And so we get analytical and, they want to build things. And so we're like, okay, how can you go build things? Because I think whatever that looks like for you, that creativity, that creator piece is such a vital piece of our journey and our healing and just figuring out what do I want and what do I want my life to look like.
I agree with you with that creative aspect. And so, I'm finishing up the final touches on my journal and I left one page for the creative thinking, even if it's just doodling, because I feel like we tap into our inner self when we do that, when we doodle, when we draw, I think we can kind of get into that zone or the flow state where we kind of escape this consumer mentality, the outer world, and we go inner, and we kind of get lost in that. And I think it's a very important part. And I am a huge believer in journaling. I always say putting pen to paper is powerful, whether that's doodling or, journaling or just getting thoughts and feelings out. But I've come to feel that journaling for me is like a pressure release valve, because I'm like this type A, like go, 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 go. And so for example, right now I'm feeling the frustration of my book not being done because I'm at like get shit done now kind of person. So it's really hard. And I'm like, Yvonne, this is teaching you something. It's really hard because people have different timelines. If you give me a timeline, I'm expecting it to be done at that timeline. And then for it to go 6 months beyond that, I'm like losing my mind. So there's definitely a lesson in there for me to learn patience, but I have to journal. I have to write it out. I have to process it because I feel this internal pressure, this internal resistance. And I always say, when there's resistance or there's conflict or when I feel that internal resistance, I feel that lower my energy. And not my energy to go out and do, but my energy of like how I show up, how I impact. Yeah. Is it bringing out the worst of me? Am I getting frustrated? Is it a low vibration? And that's generally what happens is like I want to drop F-bombs because I call it fuckstrated. I get so frustrated that I'm like, but really, and the bigger picture, I mean, I want my book to be great, right? But and I was listening to another author talk about her book as well. And you get to the point where you're just so over it and you're just so done. You're just like, and I'm like, I don't want to not love my book because the whole intention and the purpose behind putting this together was to help transform and help change others' lives. But it's a lot of work. And I pay attention to my triggers and I'll journal them because I know there's a lesson in there for me to learn. And so, which right now, the lesson's calling me is like, you just need to be patient, Yvonne. Trust the process. That was my intention. I always start my day with an intention. It's like, trust the process. Trust the process. So with your clients, tell me kind of like who's your target audience? Who do you mostly service?
The bulk of my clients I work with tend to be corporate execs or upper level management, business owners, entrepreneurs, those who really are very motivated, driven to create a life that they want. And maybe they don't even, like we said, know what that looks like and they can't articulate that, but they have that sense of, okay, this 8 to 5 isn't doing it for me, or these long nights, or I'm not fulfilled. I'm going through the motions. I did everything like I was supposed to be to do. I checked the boxes, got the job, got the family, got the house. But yeah, I'm still like, what's next?
Yeah.
And so just helping them clear out. Yep.
What's next? So I love that because I want to know, and this is for our listeners, have you ever coached a client who has all their shit together and who knows what they're doing, where they're like, because I think sometimes on social media, they're like, oh my gosh, they're crushing it. They got it all together. Have you ever met anyone that's got it all together?
No. And I think one of the questions I often get asked, both like on the private practice side and the coaching side is, well, am I like bad enough to need a coach or to need a therapist? And I'm like, okay, if we're asking that question, it's not that you're bad enough. It's probably like, okay, let's be proactive. And so I tell anyone, like, don't wait to the moment where you feel like you have hit rock bottom and now you need to find someone to help coach you out of it or come alongside you or like whatever that looks like. So if you've got these inklings of something's not going well here, or I'm not satisfied with something here, like, let's be proactive now because yeah, if you wait until that moment, or if you're like, man, I can't enter till I've got it all together, then you're never going to start.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like going to church when you're perfect. Like,
Yeah.
I'll go when I'm perfect so that I feel worthy enough to be there. Okay. I don't go to church, but I just thought of that example. So let me ask you this. Because I mean, a lot of like, even in business, like we don't have it figured out. We're just learning as we go and we're still sticking with it. What are your thoughts on self-sabotage? And like, so kind of people have this blueprint of where their life, they think it should be. And I think they get resistance around that, or they feel they're stuck because they're not what the blueprint in their mind thinks they should be at. But what are your thoughts on this? They hit a level of success and then they subconsciously start internally sabotaging themselves, where they'll mess up their relationships or they'll blow all their money in their business, or they'll like, because you are a clinical psychologist, let's talk about this subconscious self-sabotage, because I know it's real with me, especially with my diet. Like, I'll do really, really good. I'll finally get my body chiseled to how I love it. And then it's like, oh, one Oreo cookie won't hurt, or, I love brownies, and then I eat the whole pan. So let's talk about, from the clinical psychologist's point of view, what this self-sabotage is.
It is not just you. We'll start there. Like, one of the most common things that from the outside, you can look totally successful, look like you have it all figured out, all together, everything's going well. But then, at each stage of success, going back to digging in, okay, what are some of my core beliefs, even subconsciously, that I'm not aware of, that are driving these decisions, be it in your health, in your relationships, in your job or career, whatever that looks like, that oftentimes we become our own worst enemy. And a lot of times, one of the things I really talk about in sessions is agency, because I think there's a lot of situations where we don't claim the agency we have. And by that, I mean, just kind of in layman's terms, taking control of what you do have control over. Because there are always going to be so many external factors that you don't have control over: the weather, maybe your kids' health, job decisions made by other people, things like that. But what do you have agency over? And you do have agency over your mind. And oftentimes, like, we'll just start out early on in the sessions, and I am totally just point blank with people, like, actually, because they'll be like, man, you're going to have such a hard job working with me. I'm like, no, I have the easy job. You're the one who has to go do all the work, because it's all, like, the majority of it's all in your brain. And so you got to go do all that hard work, and it's not fun, and it takes perseverance and grit. And they're like, oh, really? And I'm like, yeah, that's the only way out. Like, I'll tell you straight up. And so we start unpacking, what is that self-sabotaging? Because is it going back to, I'm not worth it? I mean, oftentimes that's one of it, that I am just not worthy of this success, or going back to how I was raised, or a teacher or a parent or my first employer, like whoever it was, told me I would only get this far. And yet you might have the most successful career on the outside, but you're still operating by that principle and keeping yourself held back. And so, we really dive into that mental self-sabotage of how are you holding yourself back from creating that life.
And that's what I love about coaching is I always say, I'm going to call you out on your BS, your blind spots.
Yes.
Because we don't always see our own blind spots. And my coaching program, I'm pretty tough with them, because I'm like, you paid me. This is your time and money. I'm going to make shit happen for you, but I'm holding you accountable. I'm your big bossy sis. And I will tell you, it's the ones that don't want to do the work. They don't want to face it, because it is hard. You got to dig up some stuff. It's ugly. It's hard, but we've been band-aiding it for years. And the reason why you aren't where you want to be is because you're not facing it head on. You have to be like a buffalo. You got to go through the storm. You got to go through the yuck. You got to go through it to get to the other side. But I promise you, once you get to the other side, you're always so glad you did. So what would you say are the most common blind spots that people have? Or like, what's the most common, I always call it like this self-chatter, this monkey mind, because it is most of the time it's a story, as you mentioned. It's this negative narrative that we repeat over and over. Do you see patterns that with these, corporate leaders, do you see patterns that they all seem to struggle with, or is it just vary?
So being in Indiana, I'm kind of in the Bible Belt there. And so I also love working with women who maybe have been brought up with some bad theology, or they're trying to figure out, is like, I kind of believe in this God thing, but is that really what God expects of me? Or is it okay to love my career as much as I love my kids? And I love stripping away that guilt and just working through those pieces of it, because oftentimes it's, oh, is it okay to want these things? Because they're getting those outside pressures. And so one of those belief systems is just, oh, this isn't okay to want this at this level, or it's not okay to want money at this level. I was brought up in an environment, it was all about the security, go get the salary, get the benefits, don't get too big for your britches. Like, if you're after money, then you're vain or you're entitled, or very negative connotations with making money. And so a lot of those we then have to strip of the way. I'd say anything financially is one of the most common ones in terms of that success in a career or a job. Because yeah, if you come from a blue collar family or there's religious beliefs tied into that, it's like, oh, can I take this next step, or have I gone too far? And then that worth piece and that self-esteem is just huge of what am I deserving of? What am I entitled to? Am I worth, making a 7-figure salary? And so there's a lot of questions just on that worth piece too.
Yeah, I really want to help women get past this money thing. Like, we should be able to talk about it, not like it's a dirty word.
Absolutely.
And I talk about this in my book as well. If you look at the research, the statistics that show, I think this was in Forbes several years ago, but women in business, less than 3% of women in business have ever made over $1 million in revenue. That's a problem. Like, that's not
Absolutely.
okay. And I do believe, because women are really intuitive, I do believe that when women make more money, the world will really change, because we can serve more, we can do more, we can help more. So I'm on a mission to impact 4 million women and help these 4 million women become millionaires. And so I'm hoping this podcast, you guys, if there's something in this podcast that you hear today that you think would help another woman, another sister, a colleague, please share it with them, and please introduce them to Dr. Lani. But like, I believe as women, we need to come together and support each other. And we need to know we all have these thoughts and feelings. We all struggle with our bodies. We all struggle with our relationships. We all struggle with, our mindset, with our pre-programming. We all have something. I've yet to meet a woman that's got it all together. And like you say, social media wants us to believe that. There was a couple yesterday on Instagram, and they're pretty big influencers. And he was always, just like raving about his wife. And I'm like, oh, wow. I wish my husband talked about me like that, right? Or like, I wish I had a man in my life that just adored me and loved me like that. But they're like nearly going through a divorce. And he just posted that his marriage was nearly imploded. And I'm like, whoa, where did this come from? Like, what happened? I'm like, it is such an illusion. Like, everything. We don't even know what's going on behind the scenes. And that's what I want this podcast to be, is like, no, we're going to get real. We're going to talk about real life. We're going to talk about real things. And people were like, well, if you're going to put your personal life out there, then you have to be willing to accept other people's opinions or perceptions or feedback. I would say, like, I want people to come here and feel vulnerable, not being attacked, but know that we are human beings. We're doing our best. We're trying to show up the best we can. And we're all going to fall short. And that's where we need to give each other grace. I love the work you're doing. I'm so grateful that I met you back in St. Louis in July. I really hope that we can do more work together. I sent my event planner your information about having you come speak at our women's conference, because you do bring so much value to the women community, and your expertise, your knowledge, and your mission of what you're trying to do. So thank you from my heart that, another strong woman showing up, trying to do better and to make the world a better place. And I know it takes us coming together to love and support each other, and to believe in each other, and to put aside, any differences. Or, I always say, like, instead of judging a woman by what your first perception is, why don't you go up and introduce yourself to her and try to add value to her life and try to make a difference in her life? Because I think oftentimes we even get in our own head and we think, what judgment are they putting on us, or what are they thinking of us, And I'm like, you know what, girls, like, we need to love each other. We need to, point out each other's beautiful qualities, and we need to uplift each other, reach back and pull each other up. So thank you so much for being here with us today, for adding value to our community. And I really hope that we can do a lot of great things together and work together in the future. Is there anything else you want to leave our audience with today?
Just that reminder that when one woman wins, we all win. And that's actually totally true. And if you want to wrap it up as karma or call it whatever you want, like, that's really true, because I think in the corporate space, in my experience, I've really seen two different types of women. One, the older generation who's like, I had to fight tooth and nail to get here, and so I paid my dues and you need to pay yours too. Versus the one who's like, well, I had to pay my dues, but I shouldn't have had to, so let me pull you up with me, and get out of that competition mentality of there's enough space for all of us. We were all created with our unique gifts. And so let's cheer each other on. Yes. And so thanks for creating space for these conversations and encouraging women. And yeah, that whole money isn't a dirty word. That's a whole other conversation. But yeah, just a reminder that we're all in this together. We've all got our own insecurities. We're all fighting different battles that will never be seen by social media. And so, yeah, have a little extra grace today.
Yes. Thank you. We love you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please share this with others. Join us here every week. We want to add value to your life. We want to be your bestie through it all. So until next time, thank you for listening to the Best of Yvonne podcast.